That was that was just to get rid of the people who need immediate stimulation. All right. Now the rest of you who are left, you get to the good stuff. So we got a new series here. Start today. And it's called the Happy Crusher because there's one thing that I'm certain I do better than all the other coaches out there, which is to not just get you playing at higher and higher levels, but doing it in a way that feels better and better inside you so that your own natural style starts to come out, so that you become the version of you who is unlike anybody else, right? As a poker player and just as a person. And I've done it with so many clients now. I want to start sharing more of the stuff that I'm discovering in calls with them, with you here, so that you can start to really push the envelope of what's possible for you. And the first thing I want to talk about today is this concept of how to make yourself more dangerous at the table, right? Because if you think about it now, most poker players not very dangerous, right? Not very scary or terrifying to play against because everybody's kind of doing the same stuff, right? You study the solver, you talk the hands with your friends, you run it past your coach, you post the hands, you get the feedback, you kind of all start to think the same way. And so if you don't have anything beyond that, if you don't have anything special inside you past that, you're average. You're just like everybody else. And nobody's scared of going up against somebody who's average, right? You might, run into some hot streaks and bink some tournaments or whatever, but it's never going to be deeply satisfying in the same way as it would be if you were playing the style that truly suited you, that put others on edge, right? Where it really felt like you were the one that everybody was really thinking about and having to deal with. That's what I want for all of you, because you need that extra edge, that extra element to make sure that it's always possible for you to come out ahead and win, even if you're up against people who are like way more accomplished than you and way more knowledgeable. If you have this wave of, unpredictability coming from a place of confidence, that's going to take you really far. So I'm going to talk about a couple concepts I think that get really mismanaged all the time in poker. One is the idea of, wanting to avoid making mistakes. The other one is wanting to make great decisions, right? It's like kind of two sides of the same coin. Everybody says, I hate when I make mistakes. I hate making mistakes more than I hate, anything else. I hate it. And if we start there and you think about it and you say, okay, well, what is a mistake? I've been asking people this a lot on calls lately. It's like, what is a mistake? And usually they'll say something like, I was in a spot and then I made a decision. And then, afterwards I knew that I didn't like my decision. And, almost always what the truth about this spot is that, you made a decision based on what you knew or what you did not know in that moment. And then now sitting here knowing the things that you know after the hand, after the cards were turned over, you would have made a different decision. Well, yeah, no shit, right? Like, how many of us would do so many things differently in our lives and at the poker table if we knew then what we know now? So if you're going to go and call those things mistakes, well, then you're just setting yourself up to constantly be beating up on yourself, right? Constantly be telling yourself, like, I messed up. I screwed up. I should have done it better. If I was more focused, I would have made a better decision. No, you wouldn't. None of that is true, right? The only thing that's true is that this is the situation I was in. This is what I ended up doing. This was the result. And now this is how I feel. And it's that last part, right? It's that last part that people don't have the skill. They don't have the skill in being able to just be there with how they feel. And when you can't do that, your mind is always going to slap the label on something. This was either a mistake or a good play. Mistake, good play. One is not better than the other. When you slap the label on it, you are taking yourself away from what's true, which is, this is what happened, this is what I did, this is the result, and this is how I feel. All right? So when you think about it that way, there's no such thing as a mistake. It doesn't exist. Not in the form of like, we're all learning from our mistakes, so, nothing's a mistake. It's not like that. Like, literally, there is no such thing as a mistake, because the definition loops back to assuming that you knew something in the moment that you don't that you knew something in the moment that you didn't, right? That's the assumption. And so even if it was a thing where it's like, oh yeah, I knew better. A lot of people say that, yeah, I knew better. I've studied that before. I've seen that before. I just couldn't do it. Well, if you couldn't see it in that moment, it's not a mistake, right? If you were in an emotional state where you could not, in your mind, identify the thing that was important, that was critical to this hand, you didn't know it in that moment, right? So if you didn't know it in that moment of the decision, it's not a mistake. Mistake implies that, like, you very clearly knew exactly what was correct, and then you did the opposite. Yeah, that would be a mistake, right? Just because you wanted to lose, right? But even then, you got what you wanted. So really, like, there's no such thing as a mistake. Really need you to understand that, because when you understand that the whole mechanism of the label is just to take you away from the uncomfortable feeling, right? What you're doing is far worse, because the pain and the discomfort of feeling what you feel after losing the hand, after getting shown the bluff, after getting shown the nuts, whatever, right? What you do to yourself in your own head of, like, I made a mistake, therefore I suck, and I'm going to think about the hand, and I'm going to study the spot, and I'm going to fixate on it, that's way more costly, way more expensive, way more painful than the actual pain you're feeling. So free yourself from the pain of mistakes by understanding they don't exist. That's number one. Ties into the second piece, right? It was like making decisions, making great decisions. I want to avoid mistakes. I want to make great decisions. Again, it doesn't exist, right? Like, I was talking with this guy on a group call a few weeks ago, and he said, I really feel the pressure in these big moments because, I have to make the right decision. And I stopped him right there, because it's like, well, there is no right decision. It does not exist, right? Because you're in a place where either you don't have the knowledge, you never did, or you're just in an emotional place where you can't see it. Either way, there's no right answer, because you can't get there. And so the truth is, when you land in a spot, almost always the truth is, like, we just always want to hunt the truth here. That's how you become the happy crusher, is by being able to identify the truth and then have the emotional experience that comes with it. The truth is, you get in a spot, the classic one is somebody goes all in. You can either call or you can fold. Okay? Almost always it's either just like, I have no idea what to do. That's true. Or the one that most people have no idea exists is, I kind of want to do this one and I want to do this one, right? I want to call and I want to fold. Cool. Right? If it's true, it's true. Because if it was only I want to call or only I want to fold, you wouldn't have to think about it. You would just do the thing. Right? So almost always, it's I want both. I want to call and I want to fold. So we could eliminate like 80% of tanking in poker if everybody would just get on board with this idea. I want to call and I want to fold. Because what everybody's doing when they're, wasting their time, wasting my time, wasting your time, wasting everyone's time, what they're doing is they're spending all that time trying to find out what they want, when the truth is they want both. So you could save all that time just by starting here. I want both. I want to call and I want to fold. Now you don't waste everybody's time trying to figure out which one you want. So there's no right decision because you want to do both. That's the truth, right? You don't have to figure out which one. So from here now, if you understand that, then you can start to play these high pressure, I'm not sure what I'm going to end up doing spots in a much different way, right? Like every elite performer, all sports, musicians, whatever, they all say the same thing. It's universal, right? You got to let the game come to you, right? You can't go and like get all tense trying so hard to make it happen. But that's like what every poker player is doing now in these big spots. You just like get so in your head. It's like, I got to figure it out. I get it. You want a good result, right? But that's not how you get the good result. You get the result by letting the game come to you. And letting the game come to you means being able to, again, have that skill of sitting there, having the emotional experience you're having, the discomfort of having no idea what you're going to do, knowing that you want both, right? Feeling whatever that feels like, and then letting something happen from there. You don't need to know what you're going to do before you do it. I know it's crazy. It's crazy, right? But if I think back to all like the coolest hands of poker I ever played, and there were a lot. I wasn't like the greatest, but I did some good stuff. Right? I did some good stuff. They were all hands where I was very present in the moment, and then I just did something. Right? I did not know I was going to do it before I did it. It just kind of happens. So when you can get yourself into that place and let something happen, that's you letting the game come to you. Most people doing the opposite. Think, figure it out, prove that it's the right play. You can't. If you could, you would have immediately known I want to do this. Right? But you start with, I want both. You're with the discomfort of that. And then something's going to happen. So not only is there no right decision, but you don't even need to make a decision. Right? So if there's no right decision, you don't have to make a decision, and then there's definitely no mistakes. So when you follow these principles, you're free, right? You free yourself of the fear of making mistakes. Everybody's just so wound up and so afraid of doing something wrong. You free yourself of that. You free yourself of the pressure and the expectation of, I got to get it right. Right? There's one correct answer, and I got to find it. You free yourself of that expectation, of the pressure of that. Well, now you become somebody who's capable of anything. Now you're dangerous, right? Because nobody's going to be able to predict what you're going to do, because you don't even always know what you're going to do. And that gives you this extra element, this extra edge of unpredictability. And it can be a huge advantage, especially when you're going against people whose game you really respect, people who you know really know their stuff, right? You're going to need something to go into battle against them. Like, yeah, this is mine, right? This is what I'm doing. And I do this better than you. If I do this better than you, it doesn't mean that like I'm going to crush you over a large sample, but I can own you in this hand. And that's all you need, is to be able to like beat them in this spot, right? And so you're not going to pick up all the clues. You're not going to see all the subtle signs that people are offering to you when you're so fixated on needing to find the answer. You're doing calculations and just like thinking back to the past. What did he do here? What did he say here? What does this mean? All of that is taking you away from being able to actually observe what's happening and let the insights come to you. Again, you got to let the game come to you, right? So all of this depends on the core skill of being able to anchor yourself in the present state, because it's a fine line between letting this come through and having it feel really good and amazing and play at levels that you didn't know were possible, and then continue forward feeling good and confident. It's a fine line between that and just absolute spaz and punting and doing really, really, really stupid stuff, right? So a lot of people say they're trusting their instincts, but they're not. They're in their head, and then the emotion overwhelms them. They want to eject from the feeling, so they're just like, oh, I call. Right? Or the opposite is like, oh yeah, I'm just like so scared, so tight, afraid of making the wrong decision, I fold, right? But without actually letting the play happen, the play is just happening because they need to do something to not feel the feelings they're having anymore. But you grow this ability of like, whatever I feel, I'm here for it. I can handle it. Not only can I handle it, but I can still feel like myself. I can still operate at the pace I like to operate. I can still think clearly. My thoughts are clear. I'm not reaching for anything. I'm not trying to make anything happen. But the thoughts come to me. See, now that's where you cross the line again into brilliance of being the type of player. Nobody wants to deal with this. Right? There's a lot of people out there in the poker world who everybody looks at and says, this player, you didn't know that much, right? why is this player winning so much? Well, chances are that's the skill that this player has. They can be there in the discomfort of not knowing, right? They're free of the pressure and the expectation of mistakes and making good decisions. Somehow, somewhere they got that way. So you can do that too. But you got to be able to anchor yourself into the state of presence, the ability to accept all your feelings as they come and stay yourself. If you can, you're really going to love it, because very few people play this way. There's the reason why you can access the minds and the thought process and the exact strategies of like the best players in the world for not very much money, but nobody ever gets their results. They can give you the process. They can give you the strategies. They can tell you exactly what they would do in each spot, but every spot is unique. So you're out there just chasing the last thing and they're playing the next one. See, this is how you're going to make the leap. It's not going to be more studying. Study if you want, but if you can't do this, you're average, because everybody knows the same stuff for the most part. So, this is what I can see now after having not had to live the life of a poker player for many years. I wish I had known this stuff then, right? But it wasn't a mistake because I didn't know. So now you can take this for yourself and really make something new and different and more satisfying for yourself in poker. And I really wish that for you. So if you have any questions about this, drop a comment. If you have any topics that you want me to talk about in this series, I'm happy to talk about them. Just drop them in the comments, message me, whatever. If you want to work with me, come hit me up. My website, pokerwithpresence.com. I'll drop it into the comments section. But it's going to take a big shift, right? Like, are you going to be the player who needs to figure everything out, or are you going to be the player who wants to let it happen? It's the difference between average and dangerous. It's your choice. So I'm going to keep talking about these types of topics on this series. My editor is going to hate me because I don't have anything left for him to do. We're going low tech, even lower than before. I just hit record, talk, put it out there, and hope you guys like it, because I feel very strongly about this stuff. And this stuff has made millions and millions of dollars for my people. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.